to Houston Real Estate Radio. I'm your host, Shannon Register, and today we are talking to Dr. Jim Gaines from the Texas Real Estate Research Center over at Texas A&M University. We talked last segment and we really focused on Houston and what's going on in our Houston housing market, especially because so many people who are thinking about buying and selling want to know, they want your prediction of what's going to happen. And you gave them a messy prediction. It sounds like things aren't going to be as great as we had hoped, but we really don't know where these oil prices are going at this point.
No, there's a lot of volatility. There's a lot of delayed impact, as we were talking here in the previous sector. The market isn't going to collapse. At least we don't think so. Yeah. But it's definitely going to change. It's definitely going to slow down. Now, to some extent, that's not a bad thing because it was going real fast.
I like that.
It was really moving, and that's in general a good thing. You want that kind of growth, but you don't want it to be so wild that it gets out of hand.
There were some land prices that were rising pretty quickly, and that was making some people nervous. We're
still having trouble. The home builders are still building homes almost as fast as they can, but the demand with population increase that we've had the last 5 years and the job increases of the last 5 years have created such a demand surge that the supply side simply couldn't keep track. Yeah. Now the demand may slacken off a little bit, and maybe what'll happen is the market will just simply get a little bit better in balance. Now, for some individuals, it's going to be painful. If you're in the energy sector and you do lose your job, yes, you may feel some pain, but the market may get better.
What's interesting to me is that, it used to be that a lot of people chose to buy a resale house because it was a little cheaper than buying the new construction home. And so, you always had those people who wanted resale, and then you had the people who they wanted the brand new everything, and that was fine. Yeah. They were willing to pay the extra for it. What I found now, though, is that a lot of the, with all the green energy features and everything in a new home, it's cost effective to go ahead and buy the brand new house at the higher price than to buy the resale at the lower price. Consumers have started figuring that out, and it makes me wonder if there aren't going to be a lot of older homes sitting on the market, not because there's anything wrong with them, but because we do start having more new construction available, and people are going to choose that because even though they're not the normal people who would buy that new construction, they're going to choose it because of the advantages to it.
All of those are market factors that, will have to be factored in. There's no doubt about that. Part of the problem of buying the new home is, can you get it in the location? Because if you want to be in a given neighborhood, there might not be any new homes in that neighborhood now. What we're also seeing a lot of in Houston is, of course, substantial remodels, rebuilds. In the older neighborhoods, taking those houses that were built in the 50s, 60s, and 70s and rebuilding them essentially, and making them new. Incorporating those features.
Retrofitting them with features they need.
And we may we'll probably see that continue too, but that also raises the price points.
Right, of those resales.
In a lot of those neighborhoods. Yeah. The bulk of new construction is still happening in the suburbs. $2 gasoline helps that.
Yes, it does.
Be grateful for lower.
Hey, all those new roads help with that too. People go, okay, traffic's going to get better in the next year. I can do this.
No, traffic is not going to get better. I can tell you that
Just wishful thinking.
Wishful thinking. It's not going to happen. We are seeing on the statewide level. You asked me to talk and comment a little bit about that. We're talking about, and I'll bring Houston back into perspective of that. We are seeing the markets around the state that are more energy affiliated. Showing some slowdown. Obviously, Midland, Odessa slowed down. Corpus Christi has slowed down. Victoria has slowed down. Some of the other markets, and Victoria and Corpus, the Eagleford, Laredo, a little bit of slowdown and so forth. So not to be... Those were expected, not unexpected slowdowns. Houston's slowdown, incidentally, is like on the order of about 1%. It's not falling off a cliff.
Yeah, it's only falling off a cliff if it's you and you can't make your mortgage payment. But in perspective, it's not.
I've also pointed out to a number of people in Houston, we are measuring year-over-year changes. This August compared to last August, or this July compared to last July. Don't forget that last year was a record year.
Yeah.
So unless you're going to set a new record,
it's got to go down, right?
It's got to be down. And quite honestly, we all expected that and almost even wanted it to slow down just a little bit to get this market more or better back in balance. On the other hand, the Austin market is still going fairly strong. Dallas-Fort Worth is just exploding.
Yes, it is. I was up there, for the TAR convention, and it's nice up there.
It's phenomenal the growth that's going on in that area, considering the size of that market. Don't forget, Dallas-Fort Worth and Houston are roughly the same size markets. So you're talking about very, very large, big market things. And for them to be leading the state in terms of percentage growth and sales is nuts. Because it's such a big market. Generally, it's one of the smaller markets that has, a 2 or 3 or 400 unit increase, but it winds up being 30%. So
it's the Dallas-Fort Worth area.
It's the Dallas-Fort Worth. Now, here's the difference. Dallas-Fort Worth, their economy almost parallels the U.S. economy exactly. It's about a 0.94 correlation in terms of the economic diversity and employment base and so forth and so on. Houston's like
the opposite, right?
It's the opposite. We're like 0.7.
Yeah.
Because we are so energy dominated.
Yeah, oil and gas.
So
yeah.
The national economy, as we all are generally aware, has been doing pretty well the last year, 6 months in particular. First quarter wasn't good, but second quarter was. And so Dallas-Fort Worth is getting that buoyancy from the national and global increase in economic activity, and isn't feeling any of the negative effects, more or less, of the energy.
Okay.
Because the energy impact, J.R. Ewing notwithstanding, Dallas is not really an energy city.
I think did he get shot?
It's debatable whether he got shot or not. The other question is, did he deserve it?
Yeah, that's a good question.
The classic Texas defense. But so we're seeing this spread. Overall, the state is still doing well. Again, though, we're nervous of this lag effect that I mentioned in the first segment.
Yeah.
That when things happen in one industry, it doesn't immediately in the next 3 months translate into major movements. Not for a state and an economy as large and as diverse as ours. Yeah. So there's this lag effect.
So go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I was finished.
So the builders are still have, as far as like year over year, they're still putting in more new construction now than they were last year.
Yes, ma'am.
That's good.
Their constraints are twofold. Number one, there's not enough land being developed and lots being created. They literally are running out of lot and lot inventory. And what lots they have become so expensive that it's forcing them to build much, much higher priced product. This is true in Dallas and in Houston.
There are still lots, though, that you see in neighborhoods that, the builder or the developer still own. They were never sold as resales. And they just sit there, for years and years and years. Why don't they go back and develop on those?
Well, they are to some extent. It's basically a function of demand. I know what you're saying, and some of the
you see those just randomly in neighborhoods, and you wonder if there's such a demand, why don't they go back and grab those lots and do something?
What you find out is that for whatever reason, and I don't know all of the reasons, but for whatever reason, there are not people knocking on the door saying, "I want to buy a house in that neighborhood."
Well, they're established neighborhoods for the most part, and it would change the comps up a little bit, building a new house in with these older homes. But at the same time, though, if they don't have the land to build on, it seems like they would go back to some of that.
No, and also if it's just the isolated lot, the 1 or 2 lots here and 1 or 2 lots, there's no efficiency of construction there. They're much better off to go where they can build
10 houses,
20 houses a year at a time.
On a street. Yeah.
So the cost efficiencies there are overwhelming.
Yeah, you don't see many builders who want to build on your own lot anymore. That's hard to find because of the inefficiency and the cost of going to that one lot and building. Yeah,
that's exactly correct. And I said there were 2 factors. One was the lot inventory and that goes back to your Consumer Finance Protection Board, Dodd-Frank, the financing. They basically forced the banks out of the land development lending business and it's really, really tight right now. Money is there from some of the community and neighborhood banks, but not in the volume, not in the leverage amount that we used to have third-party land developers developing subdivisions and so on. Right now, most of the new lot development is in the hands of the major home builders. They're the only ones who have the capital capacity to be able to do it. The other factor I was going to mention was labor. It's ironic. We're talking about people losing their jobs or decline in employment. I know we keep track with all of the experts there in Houston and look at the Houston employment, and it's not going to be 100,000 jobs again this year. It won't be anywhere close.
Yeah.
But ironically, there are a lot of jobs going unfilled, and a lot of them are construction jobs, particularly in residential construction.
Yeah.
And we're getting that report from builders, not only in the Houston area, but all over the state. They can't get enough labor.
We continue to have labor shortages among our, blue collar labor. Is that what you would call that?
Sure. Well, trade labor.
There doesn't seem to be any fix for that. I mean, it seems like the trade schools are trying, and even regular schools are trying to get kids who would be good at that to move in that direction. But
I don't know how much effort's going in there. I can tell you the other problem is that some of the last 2 or 3 years, some of those folks who work in the trades and so forth went over and worked in the oil patch and made 2 and 3 and 4 times.
So now they're going to be coming back. It could get better.
It's really difficult to go from $120,000 a year to $40,000 a year job.
Yeah, so they might be coming back though if they get hungry.
But there again, there's that timing, that delay impact.
Yeah.
It remains to be seen. I was telling you with some folks out in Midland and Odessa. Their markets have obviously slowed down. The housing markets out there have slowed down. What they've got is an overwhelming abundance of abandoned RVs and mobile homes.
Wow. Yeah. No.
They didn't have permanent housing for all of that.
Right.
They didn't go out and overnight build it. You can't. Now they did build a lot of hotels. You can now get a hotel room
real cheap.
We use the hotel room rate in Midland as one of our indexes. At one time, you couldn't get a room for under $400 a night.
Wow.
In Motel 6.
And now it's, $30 a night?
Now it's cold. Come on down.
We leave the lights on all the time. Come on down. Okay, let's talk a little bit. We talked about builders. We talked about the Houston economy, the statewide economy, and you even touched on national a little bit. Let's talk about some of the different sectors. Our rental market. How's the rental market going to do?
Extremely strong.
Okay.
Still strong. We do still have a very hard demand for rental properties. I don't know what rents are going to do. Right now, rents have been progressing.
They've been high.
Aggressively. And the Class A rents and A plus rents are very, very high. But so many of the people who have moved to Houston and into the state of Texas, but I assume we're talking about Houston, that rental demand is still extremely strong. They also have run into the inventory problem. They can't buy even if they want to. They can't get what they want, or they can't find it for the price they want, or they're nervous about their job, or they don't know how long their job is going to last if they got one. So
a lot of people are becoming contract employees, and they don't know when that contract ends, if they're going to continue to have a job.
And we have a high proportion of 25 to 35 households. That age group does tend to prefer today to rent rather than to own. They're having fewer kids, having kids later. They're not going into the family business, so they're not looking for the suburban tract home as much. So percentage-wise, that number of people looking for the rental property, and they want to live in the established communities. They want to live near entertainment centers, the sports venues, and so forth.
That's those millennials, isn't it?
The millennials, right.
My whole life I wanted to be older, so I'd be looked at as being wiser, smarter, older, more respected, right, among my elders. And then I finally, get old. I feel like I'm old now, and the darn millennials, they're the rage. Everybody's all into the millennials, and I'm like, wow, why weren't they into the youngsters when I was young?
Well, Shannon, when you finally get to be 30, you'll be in good shape.
Oh
But it's
gosh.
true. But it is true. And the whole attitude, the boomers, see, I'm a good bit older than you. I was the leading edge of the boomers. We were the same way. And when we hit the market in the 70s and 80s, it overwhelmed the real estate market.
Yeah.
Overwhelmed the economy. They didn't know what to do with us. They still don't. And we didn't save. We spent, the boomers as a generational group.
And they're still spending. They're still spending on luxury. They want what they want.
That's a reason. But right now, and you're putting your finger on one of the issues. One of the hot buttons is going to be housing affordability. The other thing that's happening in Texas, and particularly in Houston and Dallas areas, our major markets in Austin, we are gradually losing that competitive housing advantage that we've had around the United States and around the world for being major market areas with very affordable housing.
The price point's going up?
Relatively speaking, we still are. If you compare Dallas or Houston
to California.
With any of the major markets in the United States, take the top 10 or 12 major markets in the United States, we compare very, very well in terms of housing affordability, average cost, median cost housing, even our rents. Our basic affordability is so much better. Think Chicago, New York, San Francisco, Los Angeles.
Yeah, cheaper to live here for sure.
A whole lot cheaper, and our general cost of living is better, and we have the best Tex-Mex food in the world.
Yes, we do.
So that still is a competitive advantage, but it is slowly eroding away, and we'll lose it in the next decade or two, and we'll become more like those other areas.
Because of housing prices or because of just standard of living, cost of goods?
Standard of living, housing costs, the shortage. What caused all those high housing cost markets to emerge was generally restricted supply. High growth, restricted supply. Guess what we were talking about first hour?
First of the hour. Yeah, that's what we were talking about, wasn't it?
We were talking about we've had this rapid increase in demand. People are moving here in droves, and we can't produce housing fast enough, and we're making it even tougher. The lending regulations, the credit availability, local rules and regulations, permitting and platting fees, impact fees, everything is impacting and slowing down the production of housing. That was the reason we had such low-cost housing. Home builders and the building market in general in Texas, we could produce housing out the wazoo. We can't do it anymore, or we're being so restricted that it's getting that balance is losing.
Well, we did a whole show last weekend about these the changes and regulations with the CFPB that came down on lending, and it's going to be interesting to see how it affects the market.
I think so. I mean, I was asked a couple of years ago what we could do, and I having gone through the buying and selling process myself on a couple of occasions, I said, well, the truth in lending and the RESPA good faith estimate on the closing cost, if I were czar of the world, I would make them have to give the buyer a copy of the good faith estimate at least a week before closing, because it'll take a week to decipher them. And that's another part where the realtors have failed or have not done as good a job. They ought to be able, and the problem has been with 24 hours advance notice, you don't have time. You can't, the realtor and the owner and the buyer and the sellers can't even get together and even talk about it and review it. So you don't know what you're doing.
Right.
And as a buyer, when you go into closing and they hit you with a 4 foot tall pile of papers,
you just sign.
You have no idea what, and I've got a PhD. I've been doing this for 40 years. I have no idea what those papers say. The title people can't tell you what they say.
No, and if you want to read it, they send you home with it and reschedule closing. I mean, they won't even allow you to stay there and read it.
The house, man. Don't hit me with this stuff. All of it has gone into legalese, and I can tell you, having dealt with a number of lawyers, they don't know what it says either.
Does anybody?
We've got a really good article coming out in the next issue of Tierra Grande on title insurance that a lot of people are going to want to read, because it isn't what you think it is.
Yeah. Well, speaking of the Tierra Grande, how can people get a copy of that? People at home listening who want to keep up with the housing market, that's a great publication for them.
Oh, I'm glad you asked. Obviously, if you're a licensed real estate agent, you get it automatically, and it's part of your fee. There's no cost. Anybody who would like to get it, there's 4 issues a year. It's quarterly, and it's $20 to subscribe. So it's $5 an issue. Just go on our website, recenter.tamu, Texas A&M University, tamu.edu, and just go to our website and you can sign up and subscribe. Also, all of the data that we have, we make available. It's out on our website somewhere.
Yeah. You guys have a lot of great information. For people who want to do oil and gas leases, you have great videos and all kinds of great research on that. I mean, there's always updated information, and I love that. I love that we can go to that site. Now, and I know if you get on the newsletter list, you get the email every week, too, and consumers can get on that list, too. Just go to the website and sign up for it. And
that's a freebie.
Yeah.
It's called Econ. It's a emailed newsletter. Comes out bi-weekly. And all you have to do is just give us your email address.
Yeah, it's great information. And, I know you guys do some great things over there. We appreciate what you do and appreciate you coming on the show. And I know that you're going to do a great job as the chief economist over there at A&M Real Estate Research Center. We're happy that you're in that position now. And, I really hope that the housing market will continue to be stable and do good things for us with the oil and gas market a little bit unsteady, unsure, not knowing what it's going to do. I hope that the housing market will remain strong because I know there are a lot of people who have waited to sell and because they couldn't find the house that they want. And if we can get enough inventory, they can find what they want, they're ready to sell. So I hope they'll have that opportunity soon.
Exactly. That's the balance we're talking about that the market has not had for the last couple of 3 years. We'll get back to it. There'll be a little pain. There's going to be some pain for individuals. There's no doubt about that's coming down the pike. But we hope that we can minimize that and then offset it.
All right. Sounds good. Well, we appreciate you joining us on the show.
My pleasure, Shannon. Thank you very much.
All right. Dr. Jim Gaines from Texas A&M University's Real Estate Research Center. If you missed any of today's show, you can go to HoustonRealEstateRadio.com and see the videos of the Skype interview that we did today. And if you like us over on Facebook, if you friend us on Facebook, we actually put a lot of the videos over there as well and let you know what's coming out week to week. Last week we talked all about the CFPB changes, and if you missed that, you want to go out and read that if you're thinking about buying or selling, because it will impact your transaction if you don't have a cash buyer or you're not doing seller financing. And then this week we talked all about the economy from Houston to national, back to the state, and all over the place. We hit it all. So we'll be back next week here on Houston Real Estate Radio. Thanks for tuning in.